Okay.
Yes. So if I could do like a little joyride, yeah. Would I be an astronaut? No, I think I'm too scared of heights.
To me, when you look at all the space stations, it looks like you're stuck in a caravan in Rosebud and it's raining, but you've got a good view.
Breakfast with Dave O'Neill, filling in for Sammy J on ABC Radio Melbourne. This is ABC Radio Melbourne with Richard Willingham.
More of your calls on the supermarket issues. 1300 222 774. But police are investigating an attempted abduction in Doncaster East last month. Detective Senior Constable Brooke Miller is from Victoria Police. Good morning, Detective.
Good morning, Richard. How are you?
I'm not bad, thanks. What are you investigating, and do you need the public's help?
Yep. So we're seeking the public's assistance in relation to a matter that happened on Thursday, 28th of March, around 2:40 p.m. Our victim, being an 11-year-old student, was walking home from school along Landscape Drive in Doncaster East when she's been approached by a grey Audi, we believe a Q3, with a male, and he's forcibly asked her to get into the vehicle. She has then quickly ran off into a bush and waited for him to leave, and then she sought some adults' help, and then her father's came a short time afterwards.
Obviously pretty traumatic for her. Is she doing okay?
She is. She's a strong little girl, but she was very fearful at that time that she was going to be taken.
And how advanced is your investigation?
Yep. So at this stage, we do have some CCTV of a possible vehicle we are looking for. We also do have what we call a face fit, so a picture that our victim put together, which will be on the Victoria Police website. So people can have a look at that and see this male that we are looking for at the moment.
Now, this happened in the middle of the afternoon. I think that's the day before the school holidays, the last day before school holidays. Middle of the afternoon, were there any witnesses around? Did anyone see what happened?
Not at this stage. So we are seeking the assistance from the public. So if anyone was on Landscape Drive around 2:40 p.m. on Thursday the 28th, any dash cam, or if anyone did see anything that was unusual, if they can contact Crime Stoppers, that would be very helpful.
And have you got concern about, I'll give you the number for Crime Stoppers, 1800 333 000. Have you received any other concerning similar reports in the area?
Not at this stage. So as I said, if anyone, sometimes people just don't think about what they've just seen, but hopefully this may jog someone's memory and they may have seen this male or this vehicle that we are looking for at the moment.
Excellent. So if anyone has seen anything, Crime Stoppers, 1800 333 000. Detective Senior Constable Brooke Miller, good luck.
Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you.
That's Brooke Miller from Victoria Police. If anyone has any information about an attempted abduction in Doncaster East on Thursday the 28th of March, please give Crime Stoppers a call. It is 11 minutes to 9. Now, it's been pretty hard to miss over the last couple of days. There has been days, each day there seems to be more asbestos found in playgrounds, or particularly in the Hobsons Bay Council area. It's been found at least 4 sites in Altona. 1300 222 774. Yesterday, the EPA issued some notices to the Hobsons Bay Council, including ordering a hygienist to inspect all council parks and regular reporting. Matt Tyler is the Hobsons Bay Mayor. Good morning.
Morning, Richard.
How did this happen?
Richard, last week Council was made aware of materials found in mulch at Donald McLean Reserve in Spotswood, and Council staff moved quickly to bring a material hygienist onto that site, and 2 pieces of material found in garden beds were sent for testing. Results last Wednesday confirmed that these were asbestos-containing materials. And following those results, we've taken a proactive approach and tested an additional 10 reserves where recycled mulch has been recently used, and testing in additional parks continues to take place.
So when you talk about recently used mulch, what's the sort of period of time? 2 years, 3 years? Have you, how far back are you going?
Yeah, we are testing parks based upon mulch that has been laid down over the last 18 months. And so the reserves that have been closed over the weekend Cross Reserve, Hoskin Reserve and PJ Lynch Reserve. There's one additional reserve, Richard, and this was announced by the EPA yesterday, where building materials have been found in the mulch, and so testing on those materials is currently taking place at PA Burns Reserve.
Does this mulch all come from the one supplier?
We're working through who the supplier is, Richard. As you can imagine, the results came in Friday afternoon, and we'll be providing all information on the supplier and also the associated contractors to the EPA.
Okay, I mean, as mayor, I mean, this is, you know, particularly for parents of kids who are, you know, they're prone to picking up whatever's on the ground and sometimes putting it in their mouth or throwing it. Can you understand how parents in particular are so concerned about this? These are meant to be safe places. What's your message to them?
Yeah, Richard, absolutely. I get it. I've got a little fella myself, and I see the way he plays in playgrounds. I think a few messages. Firstly, with regards to health, we'll take advice from the EPA on this, but from what we understand, the material found at Donald Maclean Reserve is bonded asbestos. And so what that means in layperson's terms is it's far less likely to be airborne and therefore is at the lower risk end. The second thing to say is that the mulch used in playgrounds is softball or tanbark mulch. People can get further information about asbestos, and I will give the website if you don't mind.
Go for it. Yep, please.
Richard. www.health.vic.gov.au/environmental-health/asbestos-in-the-home, and that's in Council's statement. And again, based on information on that website, in terms of the impacts of asbestos, what's really important is the exposure, both in terms of intensity and duration. And this situation is likely to be at the lower risk end, but we are taking it very seriously, and you'll see we have closed the reserves that have been impacted by this.
But a toddler could eat a piece of mulch, you know, I'm sure they have. I mean, I want to know, why is it taking so long to figure out where this mulch came from? Surely you've been working around the clock, you know, when this all sort of news broke. Why haven't we sort of identified that? And that's more for other councils and other people to understand what risks they might be at.
Yeah, as you say, Richard, we've been working literally round the clock on this, and our priority has been identifying which parks are affected and then closing those parks, because community safety is our number one priority here. We'll be providing details of the suppliers as soon as possible to the EPA. Obviously, as you point to, Richard, this has...
Do you not have it? I mean, surely there's just a simple invoice that this is who supplied this mulch. It's not that many parks, right? So, I mean, I guess people are sort of desperate to know, and yeah, it seems to be taking a while.
We'll be providing the information to the EPA as soon as possible, Richard, and they'll take the lead on this in terms of those suppliers. That obviously has statewide implications, but I know staff are working on that literally as we speak.
Do you think that there is enough sort of regulation around what's in mulch? I mean, is this something that is a failure of the system that's allowed this to happen in the first place?
Yeah, from what I understand, Richard, there are laws and regulations in place regarding the production of mulch, but, you know, obviously, given we're in this situation and we're still understanding exactly what's caused it, there's going to be learning and improvements that need to occur. And so we're obviously looking at that in terms of our own process and procedures, and there's obviously going to be things looked at further up the supply chain as well.
I mean, how much is council aware of illegal dumping? It's not. I mean, other councils have reported that, you know, they suspect that they've got asbestos due to dumping. Is it something that you see all the time, illegal dumping, just in general? And how do we address that as a society?
Yeah, illegal dumping is a massive issue. But moving beyond the specifics of asbestos, Richard, I think most councils would, you know, come up against this challenge of dumping of rubbish. You know.
So do we need a tougher cop on the beat then in terms of the EPA?
Look, I think the EPA, as it relates to this specific issue, we're working really well with. But dumping more generally is an issue not just for the EPA but for councils as well. It goes to public education, it goes to infrequent places where rubbish is dumped, CCTV, and it goes to making sure the community are aware of the options available to get rid of their waste. And so absolutely, I think there's room for improvement there, Richard.
Does Hobson Bay have a place you can dispose of asbestos?
Yes, we've got a service where once every year households can have us come and collect their rubbish, and then of course there's the Wyndham Tip nearby, and so there are options there for people to get rid of their waste. But to your question, illegal dumping of rubbish is a challenge that is, it's not unfamiliar.
Well, I guess, is it too expensive to dispose of asbestos for many people?
I'm not sure of the pricing, Richard, but I think it's something that we need to look at.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Matt.
Thanks, Richard. Appreciate you having me on.
That's Matt Tyler, Mayor of the Hobsons Bay City Council, who's been dealing with this asbestos issue. The website that the Mayor mentioned can be found by searching Vic Health Asbestos. It's on the health website of the Victorian Government. We are taking your calls on supermarkets and asbestos, 1300 222 774. Jeff is in Bentley. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Richard. Thanks for taking my call. I just listened to Craig Emerson. I'm amazed the government appointed a man who hasn't had lived experience in dealing with these supermarkets. I thought maybe Alan Fels would have been more fitting to conduct the inquiry.
Why don't you think he has lived experience?
Well, actually, I've had years and years of lived experience dealing with them face to face, and the only thing they understand, mate, is divestiture legislation. They're not scared of government legislation. They're not scared of government laws. They're really a law unto themselves. They treat suppliers with disdain, and the divestiture legislation works in the US and the UK, and it can work in Australia. Just have it sitting there, and it'll frighten them.
Dr. Emerson raised the point, though. Who would they sell it to? What do we need another operator, Jeff? Do you think?
Well, the government should. Well, the government. This is where part of the government they can make life easier for the overseas groups like NAFLAND and like Tesco to come in and compete with Coles and Woolworths. Have the sites ready for them. This can all take time, but they have the legislation sitting there, and it just shows that the government is serious about controlling the government, the supermarkets ripping people off, and gouging, and have the legislation sitting there, and it works in the US and the UK, and then make conditions better for the overseas people to come in.
Thanks, Jeff. Really interesting points. Maurizio is in Thornbury this morning. Good morning, Maurizio.
Oh, good morning. Shout out to Simon if he's listening. I'll try not to sound too much like an old man. Anyway, that's a private gag. Look, on the asbestos issue, it's a shame we didn't have time to ask the Mayor the sort of transfer station conversation. A lot of these transfer stations are run by council. Some of them have been offloaded to third parties, but these are places where one brings their building material and then it's manually processed and eventually crunched up and made into mulch. And I wonder is this a lot of the recycled mulch that's ending up in these places, or is this part of the problem? It really needs to be explored because these transfer stations are widespread and they are producers of these materials and they are often run by local government.
Thanks, Maurizio. Coming up after the news, do you like the idea of train every 3 minutes? We'll have a chat about that next.
You know when you need to get out of the car, but you can't pull yourself away from what's happening on ABC Radio Melbourne? Break free with the ABC Listen app. It goes with you, so you don't miss a thing. Download the free ABC Listen app today.
ABC News with Mary McDonald. Good morning. Police have established a crime scene and arrested 2 men over the discovery of a woman's body in Western Victoria. Stephanie Ferry reports.
It's understood the body of a 23-year-old woman from Clunes was discovered in a torched car on Friday near Scarsdale, southwest of Ballarat. Homicide detectives have arrested 2 men aged 21 and 22, and both from the southern Ballarat suburb of Sebastopol. Police say the pair is assisting them with their inquiries and the investigation is ongoing. Forensics officers are collecting evidence from a crime scene at a home in Sebastopol. It's the latest blow to the community of Ballarat, already reeling from the disappearance and alleged murder of mother of three Samantha Murphy, whose body has not been found.
Police are appealing for public assistance after the attempted abduction of a primary school student in Melbourne's east last month. An 11-year-old girl was walking home from school along Landscape Drive in Doncaster East on March the 28th when an unknown man approached her in his car and ordered her to get in. The girl managed to run and hide in nearby bushes before seeking help from a nearby resident. Detective Senior Constable Brooke Miller has told ABC Radio Melbourne it's a very disturbing incident.
She's a strong little girl, but she was very fearful at that time that she was going to be taken. So at this stage we do have some CCTV of a possible vehicle we are looking for. We also do have what we call a face fit, so a picture that our victim put together.
Police say the man is perceived to be Middle Eastern in appearance with black hair, a black beard and a moustache. A former competition minister is hoping his recommendation to make a code of conduct between supermarkets and suppliers mandatory should help to bring down grocery prices. Craig Emerson has recommended major supermarkets should face fines of around $10 million if they breach the code, which would apply to Coles, Woolworths, Aldi and wholesaler Metcash. He says it's reasonable to wonder whether a mandatory code between supermarkets and suppliers would lead to higher prices, but he doesn't expect that would be the case.
If the suppliers are really, operating on survival mode, they're not going to have the money to invest to upgrade their facilities, provide better products at lower price. So this actually fits into the cost of living issue.
The Shadow Home Affairs Minister James Paterson says the appointment of Mark Binskin as Australia's special advisor on Israel's response to an airstrike that killed 7 aid workers in Gaza last week is appropriate. Australian Zomi Frankham was among the 7 staff from the World Central Kitchen killed when Israel attacked the aid convoy. Former Defence Chief Mark Binskin will provide the Australian government advice on the sufficiency and appropriateness of steps taken by the Israeli government. Senator Paterson has welcomed the appointment.
He's a very well-respected, very senior defence leader and is an appropriate appointment for a role like this. It is important that Australia has its own perspective on this investigation, that Israel cooperates with that, so we can form our own view about the responsibility here.
Police have arrested 2 teenagers following a collision in Melbourne's southeast last night. Officers noticed a car travelling at high speeds along Cranbourne Road in Frankston around 1:15. They attempted to intercept it but were unsuccessful. The car, believed to have been stolen, continued to travel at high speeds before hitting a fence and crashing into a tree outside a home on Coprosma Avenue just before 1:30. Both the driver and passenger weren't hurt in the crash and were arrested at the scene. 2 16-year-old girls from Cranbourne and Noble Park are assisting police with their inquiries. A Victorian union representative says employers should offer paid community service to staff responding to volunteer emergency service calls during work hours. Some CFA volunteers were using annual leave while responding to the Bayandine bushfires in February, prompting calls for volunteers to receive paid community leave. United Workers Union members in parts of regional Victoria won 5 days of paid community service leave after going on strike last year. Union representative Neil Smith says large companies have a social responsibility.
It shouldn't be up to the individual. They volunteer all their time and they're often there on weekends or at night volunteering their services, and they shouldn't lose their annual leave or take time off without pay when to these multinationals it's nothing.
To the weather now for the state, mild and partly cloudy with a slight chance of isolated showers on and south of the ranges at first, becoming cloudy and scattered from the west during the afternoon and evening. For Melbourne, partly cloudy, the slight chance of a shower increasing to a very high chance of showers late this afternoon with a top today of 21 degrees. Tomorrow, showers easing 16, Wednesday showers and 18. Right now in Melbourne, it's 15 degrees. ABC News.
ABC Radio Melbourne. Traffic.
Hello there, Louis Zaka from the Department of Transport and Planning. All lanes have reopened on the M80 Ring Road, Altona bound, just before the Westgate Freeway and Princes Freeway splits. An earlier broken down truck clear. Residual delays easing slowly. Still half-hour delays from Sunshine Avenue and 20-minute delays from Ballarat Road on the Western Freeway. It may be quicker for you to use the Calder Freeway and Tullamarine Freeway. That's a tollway. Or if you're looking to avoid tolls, it'll still be quicker for you to use Ballarat Road if if you're heading into the CBD. There's still delays heading over the Westgate Bridge following an earlier breakdown. Allow extra time there. Albert Park, Queens Road, left lane blocked. City bound at Lawn Street, a broken down truck there. 3 lanes remain open. Watch out for Vic Road's incident response service crews also providing coverage there. Checking Metro trains and a good service across all lines. Just the cancellation of the Lilydale 853 Flinders Street to Ringwood service. Download the PTV app or head to the PTV website to plan your journey. That's the latest traffic and transport. It's 9:06.
Live across Melbourne.
On the ABC Listen app.
Your smart speaker.
And on 774 AM.
Now, I'm not saying that supermarkets should not be allowed to make a profit, but if they are driving suppliers to the wall, that's not really good for consumers.
This is ABC Radio Melbourne.
We are testing parks based upon mulch that has been laid down over the last 18 months.
Now we're talking.
ABC Radio Melbourne with Richard Willingham.
Do you like the idea of being able to turn up and catch a train without having to wait a long time? The government is talking about trains as fast as every 3 minutes through the new Metro tunnel. What do you think? 1300 222 774. What about other lines? We'll have a chat to the Minister shortly. Plenty of you want to have your say on asbestos in supermarkets too, including Mark in Strathmore. Good morning, Mark.
G'day, Richard. How you going?
Not bad, thanks.
Look, Richard, I can't believe the Mayor didn't know the cost of getting rid of asbestos, and it contributes to the fact that people dump it because it is expensive, especially for home handymen or renovators and or builders. I'm an ex-builder or retired builder, and
and our state. And I think that having 21st century cutting-edge public transport infrastructure like this, this is what you have for those really big global cities in the world. You have it in London, you have it in New York, you have it in Tokyo. And Melbourne is going to be just like them because that's where we're headed.
But this is just a few lines that will be using the Metro Tunnel. You said you're ambitious for our city. So what about other lines? Some lines, trains only run every 20 minutes at peak hour, and on weekends it's sort of you wait 45 minutes to get a train home from the city. When will you start looking at other lines outside of the ones that happen to go through the most politically sensitive areas of Melbourne?
Oh, well, I mean, we've looked at lines right across the board since we were elected. I mean, that's why we've looked at removing level crossings. I was really pleased to be out on site recently with the Premier where we announced that 75 level crossings have been removed 12 months ahead of schedule. Now, you can't turn around and run more trains more often if you've got boom gates down for extended period times in the morning and the afternoon peak. So we've been making investments right across the board, across all the lines, and it's why we're going to build the suburban rail loop, because the suburban rail loop will unlock so much potential in Melbourne. It will provide more housing options. It will take 600,000 cars a day off our roads. We've had a big, bold vision when it comes to transport infrastructure in this state, and we're getting on with it.
Do you think we can still afford it? The budget, your Assistant Treasurer as well, Tim Pallas, the Treasurer, has been talking about this is going to be a very, 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 very tight budget. How can we still afford something that's going to suck most of the money for infrastructure out of the budget for the next 10, 20 years?
We can't afford not to do it, Rich. I mean,
but that doesn't really make sense. If we can't, if you're putting all our eggs into the SRL basket, what about all the other projects that need funding?
Well, it's not binary. It's not a case of SRL or nothing else. We have to do this because if you think about this at the moment, we'll be the size of London by the 2050s. Now, you can't wait till the 2040s and start to then build the infrastructure to catch up with that level of growth. You've got to do it now in a really thoughtful, planned and considered way in order to meet that. Otherwise, what we'll find is, come the 2050s, you're going to be spending all your time in the car trying to get from A to B, and that will absolutely suck the productivity out of the city and out of the state. It'll be really bad, and we'll lose our reputation as being one of the world's most livable cities.
So we talk about Melbourne's going to be big as London. The fastest growing parts of Melbourne are the suburbs in the west and the northwest, and they're not being touched by the suburban rail loop in its first stage. And are they going to get the benefits of the Metro line? So, I mean, are you going to invest in services, infrastructure in those fast-growing suburbs instead of the ones that are already existing?
Well, I think a couple of things I'll say on that. I mean, we're investing $650 million to remove level crossings in Melton, as an example. Obviously, the Sunbury line will connect with the Cranbourne-Pakenham line, so that will present some opportunities. But this is why we're building the suburban rail loop, because we want to provide more housing opportunities closer to major employment nodes. We want to have a dedicated station at Australia's largest university, being Monash. We want to make sure that if you're down on the peninsula and you go to Monash Uni, you can get the train to Cheltenham and get off the train at Cheltenham, get on the suburban rail and go straight to Monash. That's what we're trying to do. We can't turn around and, when I grew up, it was 700 square metres of land, 3-bedroom brick veneer with a corridor under the carport. That was where I grew up. That was my life. But we can't just offer that as a housing solution for every Victorian over the next 50 years. We've got to recognise that we need more housing options, and we need to have more housing options close to jobs, close to those major public transport nodes, and that's exactly what the suburban rail loop is going to deliver.
We got this text from Peter, Minister. It says, great, every 3 minutes you can catch a fast train to a station, but then you wait 20 minutes. He's got a point, doesn't he, if you're changing lines?
Oh, no, well, again, I think this comes back to my earlier point. This is why we've got to do that work about rewriting the timetable. And it's going to be a big exercise because it hasn't been done. A rewrite like this hasn't been done in 40 years. The other point to make too is, to give Peter some level of confidence, I mean, since 2016, we've added 1,200 additional services along throughout the Metro rail network. So, we've got form when it comes to adding services, and I think that in relation to the work that's before it will be a big rewrite of that timetable, which will be fantastic.
Bring it back to the budget. need to make some tough decisions. Is the level crossing removal, I think it was more than $1 billion project for the Upfield line, is that still going ahead?
Oh, well, look, I mean, that will be, I think in terms of questions around budget, that's really a matter for the Treasurer, but we've been abundantly
You're working
clear.
closely with him, though, surely, as Assistant Treasurer and Minister in charge of the big spending projects.
Well, I mean, I far be it for the Assistant Treasurer to steal the Treasurer's thunder. I don't think I'd be Assistant Treasurer for very long. But look, what I would say is our commitment has been to remove 110 level crossings, and we're on track to do that and to honour that commitment.
And one more, just before we let you go, Minister. Airport Rail, is there any progress on that whatsoever? Is a mediator in place? When can we start to see some work there?
Well, we've tried really hard with the private owner to try and come up with a pathway forward. We spent 3 years and we didn't get far at all. Look, the Commonwealth have indicated that they're going to appoint a mediator, and look, we're awaiting the outcome of that work. But we'll engage in that process in good faith. But look, 3 long, hard years, and we couldn't get an outcome. It was pretty heavy going.
Danny Pearson, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Rich. Have a good one.
Minister Danny Pearson, Minister for Transport Infrastructure and the Assistant Treasurer. Amongst his many titles, he's also the Labor MP for Essendon. Sally is in Brunswick East. Good morning, Sally.
Oh, good morning. Look, I'm just ringing in response to listening to Danny Pearson just speak then. I have to say I'm completely disgusted that as Melburnians and Victorians we may have to go through another major interesting idea to put more infrastructure into our community, and we're worried about outcomes in 2050 when as a state we are so in debt, we have so much debt. I have always voted Labor, but hearing him talk has just made my blood boil. It's a complete vote. I will not vote for that. The idea of them putting all this money when there are people under so much financial pressure because of issues to do with inflation and interest rates and all of that sort of thing. I'm an inner city dweller and I have benefited from various things that have been put forward by the, previous government, but the idea of investing again at this level and these big crossing things that have happened that he's raving on about, I've seen a number of those happen. Some of my friends were moved out of their place as a result of that. They are treeless, anti-nature infrastructure projects that I find to be concrete mayhems, and I'm appalled hearing that he's actually...
Thanks for sharing that, Sally. Interesting point of view. Plenty of you on the text. Want to have you say too. 3-minute trains. Believe it when I catch it. Lived in London for 4 years and trains would run every couple of minutes on the tube. Would get angry if we'd have to wait over 4 minutes. It's Stephen from Parkdale. And Dina asks, why is media so against public transport upgrade? Just thinking about money. Why? We need better public transport. Next, I'll have a chat to you about whether our volunteer firefighters need special leave to help them fight blazes.
The May issue of Gardening Australia is filled with growing goodness. Feast your eyes on gorgeous new release roses. Read about growing proteas and Japanese zelkova. And take a fresh look at chrysanthemums. Visit an artist's garden, give your indoor plants a health check, learn how to maximise your veggie harvest, and get tips on easy ways to compost. Available from newsagents and abcmagazines.com.au.
This is ABC Radio Melbourne with Richard Willingham.
Happy Monday morning. I hope you're settling into the week okay. It is 20 minutes past 9. Now, we've had some pretty big fires over the summer, particularly in Victoria's west, around Beaufort. Volunteer firefighters, of course, every summer they're critical. The whole system relies on them giving up their time. They're volunteers. But for a lot of volunteers, it's emerging, it means they're giving up their annual leave to help fight fires for their community. Beaufort CFA volunteers did it last month when they fought that big fire out west. And it sparked a bit of a discussion about the need for paid volunteer leave. It's available to some people, but not everyone. Tony Neville is the Beaufort CFA captain. Good morning.
Morning, Richard. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. Did you have to sacrifice your annual leave to fight those fires recently?
I had about 4 or 5 days off, as did a lot of other members of the Beaufort Fire Brigade. It's the only way we can man the trucks over that period.
And how are your employers with you taking that leave in the first place?
My employer was was pretty reasonable this time round. I mean, some employers don't like it because it obviously impacts on their business.
Is it a difficult discussion for some members? And are you finding that it means that some people are no longer volunteering because they have to put their decision between, keeping their job essentially and keeping their bosses happy and fighting fires?
Yeah, not so much not volunteering, but they can't attend sort of big jobs that go on for longer than half a day or a day because their employers can't afford to be without them.
Do you have a solution, Tony? What's needed for...
I sort of raised the issue a couple of weeks ago that it would be beneficial, I think, if the CFA could, or the government could introduce a similar thing to CFA as they do for Army Reserve, like if CFA members were while they're on actual firefighting duties.
We know that some employers, the United Workers Union members, have won it. They get leave to go and work for this, volunteer and fight these big campaign fires. Do you think that it's something that the state government and the federal government should be looking at to make it a flat rule that there is better provisions for people to get volunteer community firefighting leave, essentially?
Oh, I do. Look, I think it would help overall with firefighter numbers and the amount of people that are actually available. Even if we had like a ceiling of 2 weeks per year, overall to being able to go and fight the larger fires, it would certainly help us out.
You mentioned, trying to retain and attract volunteers has become difficult for some CFA communities. How are you faring in Beaufort?
Look, it has been, and up until the large last fire at Bayandine, like our numbers were going on a downward turn more than upward. I mean, since the fire we've had, I think about 13 people sort of, looking at becoming volunteer firefighters. Before that, it was just slowly as people, retire or whatever, the numbers aren't being replaced.
Well, good luck with that. I hope you can keep the members there and keep them happy, and hopefully you can find a solution to this. So thanks for all your work.
No worries. Thanks very much, Richard.
It's Tony Neville there, the Beaufort CFA captain. It is coming up. It's 25 minutes past 9.
This is ABC Radio Melbourne with Richard Willingham.
Yes, Richard Willingham is my name. Simon is in Morwood. Good morning, Simon.
Yeah, hi, Richard. Look, I was rather offended by Edmondson's straw horse argument that we can't divest individual supermarkets. Of course we can't. It's a nonsense idea. I suggest what we need to do is break each of the major groups, Coles and Woolies, into 3 separate operations each. Divide up the stores, create 3 new corporate entities, and at the same time hive off their wholesale distribution arms, so you end up with 3 versions of Metcash. And we bring real competition into the market.
It's an interesting idea. Thanks for sharing that, Simon. Plenty of you want to have a discussion about what's going on with our supermarkets. It affects us all every day, every week at least. The supermarkets are so powerful, nothing other than extreme action would make them think twice. Nice, Craig Emerson, but I have no confidence your recommendations will help at all. That's Robin in Hastings. And Ned says, this is plain corporate greed with and government's scripted involvement. Codes of conduct are only put in place to shut people up. Thanks for sharing that, Ned. Now, a lot of you will remember a conversation recently with Sam Haycroft, a Phillip Island man who won a bravery medal for pulling off a dangerous ocean rescue. He told RAF he felt like a big idiot once he got out of the surf and worried he was now in trouble too.
Stripped down to my undies and just pounced out into the freezing cold water. And when I get out there, there he is sitting on the capsized boat, in his undies and a bloody woolen sort of sweater. Yeah, I couldn't feel my legs, hypothermia. And that's when I was like, oh, I'm a big idiot. What am I doing? That was kind of the moment of sort of embarrassment and fear, I was like, oh, what have I done?
Now, Sam was able to pull off that rescue because he borrowed a surfboard from someone on the beach. But what if you don't have something like that to help you? What if you're on a remote beach and you see somebody caught in trouble? Well, Lifesaving Victoria is looking at introducing rescue tubes stationed on beaches to make ocean rescues safer. Bernadette Matthews is the Principal Research Associate at Lifesaving Victoria. Good morning.
Good morning, Richard.
What's your plan? What would you like help to do?
Yeah, so we've been working with Venus Bay Surf Life Saving Club, and they had a significant incident where a bystander was attempting to rescue someone. So similar to the situation that you played before, they tried to rescue something, and sadly that person who attempted the rescue unfortunately drowned. And we know that there are a number of situations that do occur when someone does try to help someone in the water. They don't necessarily have a flotation device with them, and they go in and try to assist and end up being the victim themselves. So the idea with the trial is that we'll have these rescue tubes stationed at Venus Bay. They haven't been installed yet, but we're hoping to install them soon. And they also have a call button. So that means that before entering the water, you can press the button and that will go through to emergency services. And it also means that if you're not confident in the water, that you don't have to go in, because that call will go through to emergency services. So, but if someone does have the skills, that they can use that rescue tube.
So what do these rescue tubes look like, and how do they work?
So they're like the ones that the lifesavers use. So you'd see the yellow tube, and it can wrap around someone. So you can swim out to the person. It can either wrap around them, or you can both hold on to it and float and make your way back into the shore. So yeah, it's like the ones that you'd see our lifesavers on the beach with.
But did you say this was only going to be at Venus Bay?
At this stage, we're trialling it at Venus Bay. They have been used in other places in Australia and also internationally, but it is something that we're trialling first at Venus Bay, and we'll see how the trial goes.
Phillip Island seems to be a bit of a hot spot. Why not trial it at Phillip Island?
Yes, certainly we will look at, other potential locations. We think that it has a lot of potential for use, and as I said, has been used internationally as well as throughout Australia, but it's important to trial it, and we have been working very closely with Venus Bay on this one, but we are open to looking at other locations as well.
I mean, you mentioned before people get into trouble when they're doing a rescue. Have you got any warnings or advice to people who might be confronted with this situation that might not necessarily have the requisite skills?
Yes, it's really important to call for help. So call 000 first and foremost. Look around for anyone who can assist. And, if you don't have those skills, it's really... I know it's really hard, but you really shouldn't be going into the water if you don't have those skills, and certainly if you don't have a flotation device. So we often see that our surfers conduct a number of rescues. They have, the water skills, they have the knowledge of the water and understanding of rip currents, but they also, most importantly, have a flotation device with them. So really important that you seek help if you are confronted with that situation.
And I guess, do we just need more awareness, just generally? Do you think that as a community we know enough?
I think it's always something that we're trying to, raise awareness for people around how to, be safe when they're going to our beaches and open waterways. It's really important for people to plan ahead before they go, to do things like checking the Beach Safe app, and that'll show the beaches, the hazard rating of the beach that you're going to. It'll also show when the patrols are, so when our lifesavers will be there. So really important to do that and make sure that you're swimming and going to places, recreating around water that's within your capabilities.
Okay, and so just when did you say the trial will begin in Venus Bay?
Oh, we're still waiting on the final approval. So
who's that from? You're waiting for?
So that's through DECA. So we'll as soon as we get that approval, we're hoping to be ready to go before the end of June.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Richard.
Bernadette Matthews, Principal Research Associate at Lifesaving Victoria. What do you think? Is it a good idea to install rescue tubes at Victorian beaches that aren't patrolled? 1300 222 774, or send a text 0437 774 774. Mary McDonald is in the newsroom and has all the latest news. Good morning, Mary.
Thanks, Rich. The Prime Minister says he wants former Defence Chief Mark Binskin to have full access when scrutinising Israel's response to a series of airstrikes that killed 7 aid workers in Gaza last week. Air Chief Marshal Binskin has been appointed to lead Australia's examination of Israel's investigation into the attack on the aid convoy. He'll provide the Australian government advice on the sufficiency and appropriateness of steps taken by the Israeli government. A council in Melbourne's West says it's prioritising community safety as it works to identify and close parks that may be contaminated with asbestos mulch. Yesterday, the Environment Protection Authority ordered Hobsons Bay Council to inspect all council-managed parks and gardens that have received mulch in the past 18 months. Council has also been ordered to hand over contractor and supplier records. And the peak body for Victoria's social and community sector is calling on the state government to ensure renters' rights are protected as many continue to do it tough. A new report from the Victorian Council of Social Service has found many renters are left feeling powerless despite the state's strengthened protection laws. The organisation is pushing for changes, including more public housing, in addition to existing commitments, a clear definition for fair rent increases and an expansion of minimum rental standards. Melbourne's weather, showers developing with a top today of 21. It's currently 15 degrees. And for more news, keep listening. Or for other local stories, ask your smart device to play the latest news from ABC Melbourne.
ABC Radio Melbourne. Traffic.
Hello there, Louis Zacher from the Department of Transport and Planning. All lanes now open on the M80 Ring Road, Altona bound at Boundary Road following an earlier breakdown, and delays have eased, so some good news there. A little bit heavy on Manningham Road, approaching the intersection of Manningham Road and Bulleen Road. There's North East Link project works on the go there. A lane closed in each direction between Bulleen Road and Yarra River. Allow extra time heading through there. It's also a little heavy on Bulleen Road approaching that same intersection. There was an earlier collision too on Manningham Road. That has since cleared, but delays are due to those works. And the outbound exit from the Westgate Freeway to the Balti Bridge closes tonight from 9 until 5 tomorrow morning for Balti Bridge works. All traffic will need to continue on to the exit at Todd Road, then U-turn via the Todd Road and Cook Street exits to the city-bound lanes to reach the Balti heading towards the airport. You'll need around 5 to 10 minutes extra for that detour. Checking Metro trains this morning, green across the board, a good service for all lines. That's the latest traffic and transport. It's 26 to 10.
The ABC Listen app gives you superpowers. It's like your ears got bitten by a radioactive earworm from the planet Talkback. And every time you open the ABC Listen app, your ears put on colourful little tights and run around fighting crime. The crime of not listening to radio, am I right? With the ABC Listen app, you can listen live or listen on demand wherever you go and whatever you're doing. You can even text and call live programs in a single a single tap, direct from the app. Download the ABC Listen app today.
This is ABC Radio Melbourne with Richard Willingham.
We were talking life-saving earlier, and B of Brunswick says, great idea about these rescue tubes, but a bit concerned about the abuse of that button, which automatically calls emergency services. Paddy in Venus Bay, she says she's a local. I hope they set them up at all 5 beach entry points. Also, a few weeks back, surf lifesaving crew packed up at 3 p.m. on a hot day when water was very treacherous. Lots of tourists in the water, and I was waiting for the worst to happen. And this other suggestion says, sell rescue tubes at Kmart. Well, you need to learn how to use them first, I think. But all suggestions welcome. 1300 222 774. We are going to talk sport in a short minute. Footy's over in Adelaide. Everyone's returning back to their home states. What took your fancy? Send us a text 0437 774 774. But first, we need to check in with how our weather's looking with Stephanie Miles, senior forecaster at the Bureau. Good morning.
Morning, Richard. How are you?
I'm good. Good. Looking nice and sunny out there this morning, from where I'm standing anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks like a gorgeous morning out there. We've got a lot of blue sky, a lot of sunshine coming through this morning too. But look, at the moment we're about 16 degrees in the city. We're heading for a top of 21 degrees with a couple of showers developing this afternoon. And then we will have a more prominent line of showers move through us, perhaps around commute time or around dinner time tonight, with a cold front that is crossing the state. And look, those showers will continue overnight. But by tomorrow, we will be in a more cooler southwesterly airstream as our next high pressure ridge builds over us. So what that means is cloudy mornings with a couple of showers around around, and then hopefully a little bit of sunshine around in the afternoons. But look, some cooler temperatures. Tomorrow we've got 16, Wednesday 18, Thursday 18, Friday 19 degrees, so some cool max temperatures. But then by the weekend we have some warmer conditions. We've got 20 both days, but hopefully some dry conditions too.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Stephanie Miles there, forecaster at the Bureau of Meteorology. It is 9:36.
The Premiership Pies looking like their old selves. This could get Carlton the win.
We actually landed a UFO in, walked out 22 aliens and put on the St Kilda jumper.
It is time to talk sport. Joining me this week is Matt Clinch from ABC Sport. Good morning, Clinchy.
Good morning, Rich. Good morning, everyone. Great to be back after Gather Round.
Kate Roffey is the president of the mighty Melbourne Football Club. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning, Richard. Good to have a fellow Melbourne supporter on air.
Yeah, I've got to be, obviously, there's no bias at the ABC. No bias.
Not.
Big week in sport, particularly footy, the second iteration of the Gather Round. Clinchy, you headed to South Australia for the weekend?
Yeah, they had an increase of around 38% of the fans had travelled from interstate across to be there for the second edition of the Gather Round. I must say, it feels like a coming together of sort of grand final weekend schoolies, depending on what your experience is. If you're taking the family, it's a great experience because there's Elder Park just across from the Adelaide Oval. A lot of the players, I'm sure Kate can chat about this, made appearances across the weekend, and that just enhanced the experience for the young fans. But for those others who could drive across from Victoria, from Western Australia, it's unusual to have so many clubs all in the one place for a weekend. So I think another raging success. I think they've just about bedded it down. We've seen opening round in New South Wales and Queensland. I think we need to come up with some sort of concept for WA, but and of course Tassie when they come in the competition. But
succession round.
Well, yeah. But they did do it well. A couple of controversial finishes on Saturday. But, I mean, Kate, for your Demons, 4 wins on the trot. Things are just bubbling along nicely.
Yeah, I think that was as tough as it gets to play both Adelaide teams back-to-back at Adelaide Oval. I mean, the Adelaide crowds are fantastic for their teams. They're so parochial and they give them such a boost. But, yeah, we came off 4 days between game days with those two matches. So to back up and win both was extraordinary. I think that's probably as hard as it gets, Clinchy.
Kate, when the club saw the draw and the fact that Melbourne would be the unlucky team that would play 2 weeks in a row in Adelaide against the home sides, what was the reaction from yourself and club officials?
Not so much club officials. It doesn't really matter what we think. It's more the coaches.
That's
and the
what I mean.
players.
Sorry.
They took it as an opportunity to get away and actually use the time to stay in Adelaide. A lot of families went over with the players and they based themselves there. I came back for work, so I went over and back. So I'm smashed from the travel personally. But they did that and they used it as a time where they could actually, sort of like they talked about it being like in COVID where we're in the hubs and you had that opportunity just to really knuckle down and focus on football. There was a lot of social. We got quite a few players who are Adelaide based, so they had a lot of, I know one of our players' families had 20 or 30 or so over for Easter lunch. Penfolds, who sponsor us, we spent a bit of time at Penfolds, which was nice. So we just saw that as an opportunity, and you don't worry about what the draw is. It is as it is. So the upside is hopefully working out. On fairness, we shouldn't have to play either team over there in Gather Round for 17 years. So that's fantastic.
Kate, obviously the thoughts of Chris Scott as to whether the two South Australian clubs should play a showdown in the Gather Round to try and give them one less advantage. Do you have a view on that, given you did play both South Australian sides? And it felt like from your club, we spoke to Christian Petrarca a couple of weeks ago, and he said there was a real mindset to try and embrace the fact that you're going to be in Adelaide and spend some time with the families and try and really bring the playing group as close together as possible.
Yeah, I think that is one of the things they have to consider is the fact that the two Adelaide teams do get the home ground advantage. It's not a home ground advantage for anyone who plays at Norwood or Mount Barker. It doesn't matter who plays there, for example, or the teams that aren't Adelaide-based. So that's something we discussed last year, when I was talking to Gil about it. I said, how do you balance that out? So that's something that they'll have to deal with draw-wise. But I think, clubs, every year someone's going to get to play the Adelaide teams over there. So that's just part of Gather Round, and it's a great thing, as you said, Matt, to see. We don't usually see teams on the road you go, you play, and you come back. So it's one time where you walk out of the door of your hotel room and you bump into players and coaches from other teams, and that's one of the great things about Gather Round. So I think the concept's good. It's got a great atmosphere. It's just how you do balance out that, is that their home game for them for the season and they get one less. I'm not sure. The draw's complicated enough as it is without me trying to get involved in sorting it out.
Yeah, the fixture certainly has some challenges with the Giants. They haven't lost a game so far, and then you look at the sides on the bottom, we've got 4 winless teams. Will Melbourne, in your eyes, will they appeal Cozzy Pickett's one-match ban?
I haven't spoken to anyone about that at all, so I don't know. Sorry, Matt, I haven't spoken to the team about that.
I do want to ask you, Kate, there's obviously been a lot of noise about Melbourne. Is it a club in crisis?
No. So obviously we do our stuff on the field, and that's clearly showing through. So,
did you know about Andrew Wilkie's claims?
Not commenting on it. Yeah, not commenting on anything. We'll focus on the field.
Was this good timing then, the trip away for the playing group, do you think?
Like I said, the draw is the draw. We knew it's been coming the whole time, so we didn't get a choice on it. So we take what we get and we do the best that we can on the field with what we've got, and I think they've done pretty well.
Now, let's focus what happened on the field. St Kilda yesterday beat Richmond, but from all reports, it was a pretty ordinary first half of football. Here's what the coach of St Kilda had to say.
I'll tell you what happened. We actually landed a UFO in and walked out 22 aliens who put on the St Kilda jumper 23 and went out and played. So we flipped the team.
Clinchy, what is he talking about?
I think he's talking about giving them an old-fashioned spray at half-time, given the fact that they just scored 1 goal only in the 30 seconds before half-time. So they were able to turn it around in the second half. Richmond played incredibly well, given some of the key personnel they were missing. But, it's a unique little place, Norwood. It only holds around 10,000, so the fans are right there on top of the playing surface, and so it is easy to score right from the middle of the ground, and that's what Richmond were able to do relatively well in the first half. But, St Kilda are in those sort of bracket of teams that will be fighting for a spot in the top 8. Have they improved from last season? You'd hope so, but really interesting result.
Do we start to see, a question for both of you, have we started to see who are the contenders and who are the pretenders? We've had, 4 or 5 rounds, depending on which club is going hand. Kate, are we seeing separation?
I think I always wait for a little bit longer because it depends on who you've played and where you've played. So at the start of the season, we've been on the road. We played 5 games, been on the road for 3 of them. So that's tough. So really, unless you're diving into the draw and who's played who and where they've played, it's hard to tell. So I think I'll give it a few more rounds yet. Everyone was writing off Collingwood. They probably didn't play their best. Hawks did really well yesterday, but I expect them to get better. I think maybe the bottom sort of teams that are struggling are probably not going to climb too far up the ladder, but I think that next branch is well and truly still a long way open yet as teams work out game style. One of the first things you do is, I wasn't expecting that team to play like that, and then you see the Swans, for example, coming back to the field now as I saw some article yesterday, I think, that said teams have worked out how to lock the Swans down. So that'll happen throughout the season.
Yeah, if you're not following the week to week, there are other sides that played in the opening round, so they played 1 extra game. So they played 5 matches as opposed to the other sides that have played 4. We are having buys earlier than what we have had just because of the challenges around the fixturing. So Collingwood and Sydney both have the bye this week. But I do think the better sides are starting to emerge. So the Giants sit on top. Melbourne is second, Sydney in third, and Carlton in 4th position. I think those 4 are certainly laying the foundations. Geelong, Port Adelaide, Fremantle, and the Western Bulldogs all had pretty good starts. So the sides that probably feel like they're chasing their tails a little bit. Collingwood, who just have got the couple of wins. The Brisbane Lions, who got a crucial win over the weekend. Adelaide have probably been the surprise packet. They haven't won a game so far in the 4 rounds of the season. The other interesting part, Kate, was the close finish at the Adelaide Oval involving Carlton and Fremantle. I'm not sure if you saw the result here, but it's always confusing whenever, Richard, you can jump in, fans.
Let's have a listen to what happened at the end of that game.
There's been a free kick given away from Fremantle, which is absolute madness if that has happened and a player has been pushed over, because they would have had chance for one more shot, and now Kennedy can go back. He comes through and the Blues are going to win.
So we had a situation there where the ball was touched, it was paid a mark, Fremantle players remonstrated and another free kick was given and game over. How lucky were Carlton to get that win?
Well, if you ask Carlton supporters, they probably think not that lucky, but as you said, the circumstances proved that the ball was touched. Matt Cottrell kicked the goal, but James Aish did get a touch onto it. The unfortunate part is that there was a second goal that came as a result of a verbal abuse, and obviously we can't have that in the game where the umpire dissent has returned. So the part that's controversial is that the free kick took place from exactly where the previous goal had been kicked. So I think that'll be the argument, is should the free kick go back to the middle of the ground, given...
But was a 50 metre not played from the middle?
Well, I guess the free kick is just paid where it has occurred. But
Downfield.
the part I always find confusing in those moments, Kate, and we're fortunate, we're calling it, we have a great vantage point, but we can't hear the umpires unless you're following the television commentary. So it makes it a little bit hard for the fans at the ground. If you're a Carlton fan or you're a Fremantle fan, you're trying to work out exactly what that free kick's for, and other than jumping to conclusions, most of the time you can work out, well, there was nothing obvious, so it must have been something that was said.
Kate, any thoughts on that?
No, well, only thankful that it wasn't one of the Adelaide teams that it went against, so there could have been an absolute riot on the ground. But I think, the things get missed all the time in a game. It's difficult, you wouldn't be an umpire for all the money in the world, so that happens. The remonstration piece, we know as players, and you know that you just can't do it these days. The technicalities, I think Laura Kane's come out and said, yes, it should have been it was touched, so it shouldn't have been a mark, but too late now. The question, as you say, about where the free kick is from, I presume that was a downfield, it goes in the spot where it was before. But, again, you look at it and say, well, it shouldn't have been that close that it made any difference anyway. But that's what makes the game exciting, isn't it? We've been on the receiving end of those sorts of calls. And
all the time, in my opinion.
That's right. Yeah, that's right, Richard, all the time. And it happens. It's sometimes you're the beneficiary and sometimes you aren't. And, just whatever you do, just don't remonstrate with the umpires, players, because that's a straight out penalty as soon as it happens.
Gate, you said you wouldn't be an umpire for all the money in the world. Do we need to pay? Do we need to pay umpires more to get more of them?
Well, I think it is a really tough. It's a tough gig. We all sit there and complain because depending on which way it goes, it's they're all one-eyed. That's just how it is. But it is a really incredibly tough because it's so subjective. My mum, who's in Queensland, she goes, I don't understand this holding the ball rule. I said, nobody does.
Yeah, I do think that's a bit of a challenge to the AFL to try and make sure they articulate that a little bit better from the week to week. But I also am sympathetic that there was fans who provided vision from their mobile phones that says, well, here's clear evidence that the ball was touched. You should be able to overrule this, and maybe we could have a captain's call. It's taken to Sunday to get that outcome. So
don't get the reviews going. It'll slow the game down too much.
Yeah, the game moves just simply too fast. But the challenge is around technology, and that's something they continue to try and address.
Now, Port Adelaide...
That's not going to happen on the field, though, with a touch ball. I don't know how you could possibly, do that off the finger. There's something nice about the subjectivity of an umpire calling a holding the ball thing. It's the thing. We don't have straight line games like you do in rugby league, rugby union. That's the thing of football. So you don't want to get too, IT based in terms of it's this, that, and the other. That's the joy. And what would we be complaining about if something like that didn't happen?
Exactly right.
I'm sure
we wouldn't need to do this segment, would we, Richard?
No,
nothing to complain about.
It's part of the theatre of the sport. I do want to ask Jeremy Finlayson, a Port Adelaide player, has been fined for a homophobic slur which he's admitted. Clinchy, can you talk us through what's happened?
Yeah, so it took place in the third quarter. Informed the club official at three-quarter time as to what has taken place. He's issued a public apology. The AFL no doubt will issue a statement at some stage today in terms of what penalty will become, but the umpire's microphone picked up the insult that was heard by at least one Essendon player, so I guess it's been addressed. It's disappointing that it still happens in today's era, but I guess the challenge now for the AFL is what sort of statement are they going to send in terms of penalties. So Alistair Clarkson got a couple of weeks for a homophobic slur he made in the practice game between North Melbourne and St Kilda, but Taylor Walker had 6 weeks last year before.
That was for a racist...
That was a racist comment, yes. So they are different. They are different examples, but somewhere in between 2 to 6 would be what I'd be expecting.
So you did think he will get suspended?
Yes.
You do think he'll be suspended?
Yes.
Okay. Any thoughts on that, Kate? On whether the...
No, I haven't heard anything. That's more than I knew, Clinchy, from what you've just said. So we'll wait and see. What I think it just has to be. It doesn't matter what the slur is. It's unacceptable. So I would have thought a standardised penalty going forward is the way that you deal with all of them.
Now, Gather Round is back again next year. South Australia got a 3-year deal. I believe they're going to be playing games in the Barossa. I'd expect Melbourne to be involved in that one. Kate Roffey?
I'm hoping. That's I don't know. I'm not sure what oval that's going to be at, but I haven't been to Mount Barker actually. We haven't. We played all our games at Adelaide Oval so far, so I haven't been to Mount Barker. But they tell me it's beautiful up there, windy, but a beautiful place to play football.
I think the challenge for Gather Round is they're continuing to try and improve it year on year on. So the Premier of South Australia, Peter Malinauskas, has done an incredible job about owning the occasion and really trying to maximise it for interstate travellers. So, yeah, the Barossa is the suggestion for next year. You could just tell the activation sites. So many of the 18 clubs all had players who were there, and Kate mentioned Christian Petrarca doing the cooking show. So it's a chance for young fans to get there. The most bizarre thing, Richard, is they were selling Gather Round jumpers, which had all 18 of the clubs.
We talked about this on Friday.
I couldn't believe people were buying them, but they were so popular. I guess they're going to be collector's items. So, hey, credit to them. Any way they can make money, and I know, chatting to a few people over the weekend, there's a few who are keen to get involved next year.
Does it evolve beyond next year to a different city? Is there anywhere else in Australia? Could it work, Kate?
That's a tough one. Adelaide, Melbourne, where you've got the venues in the city centre with the Norwood's pretty close, Mount Barker's a little way away. That's part of the logistics. Is it's not just the venues; it's how you actually get fans to and from the venues. And I actually saw something on the Taylor Swift, to give an example. The Taylor Swift benefits